Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. Thanks for joining me for another live stream where we'll be chatting about anything and everything from design systems to front end to back end to the future of the web, and today to data visualization and talking about D3, all sorts of cool stuff in the data viz space. I'm really excited about today's chat. So for those of you who are new, basically the format of these chats is we'll go back and forth, just have a pretty conversational chat for the first half, and feel free to leave any comments on the live stream about any questions you have, and then we will try to get back to you before the end of the stream. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest today, Amelia Wattenberger. She is a staff research engineer doing R&D on developer experience at GitHub. She's been doing data viz and web development for over a decade and has created a fantastic course called Full Stack D3 and Data Visualization. So I highly recommend checking that out if you haven't. But without further ado, let's please give a warm welcome and a round of applause to Amelia.
Hey.
Hey.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for joining me. Where are you based out of?
I'm in DC.
Okay, cool. So you're it's not too late for you. That's nice.
No, it's perfect. It's like, I don't know, 3.
Nice. Yeah. I'm in the Midwest, so it's 2 here. So we're on a close time.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm really glad that you were able to join today because I have seen your course. I have seen some of the articles that you've written. And I remember the first one I stumbled on talking about just like the intro to D3. I was totally blown away at not only like how well the content was wrote, but then also, some people might publish something like that and just do the content. And you kind of took it to the next level with the interactivity and the visualizations like built in. And I love this style of blog that really makes you like feel like you're learning as you go and to try things out. How did you kind of come up with that idea to like make more blogs like that? I mean, data viz is in your DNA now.
Yeah. I think my answer is not ideal for people who want to do this, but it's basically I'm lazy and I don't like writing words. So the reason I write blog posts is I feel like I'm self-taught. So I feel like everything I've learned online from people who have devoted resources and their time to making blog posts. And I felt like it was kind of time to give back now that I feel like I'm in a space where, hey, I know a decent amount about SVG or some CSS concept or D3, like let's do a blog post about it. So there's usually like a central thing I want to talk about, and then I'll sit down and basically we'll try to find excuses not to write words, but instead to make little interactive things.
I love that. That actually echoes some of the things that I've done too, because writing is so hard. It's like you want to teach people, you want to get that content out there, but those shortcuts that'll help you get there a little bit faster, those are excellent.
Yeah. I'm also like, I'm really interested in taking web development to the next level. Like I feel like we had newspapers and then we put them online and we're like, this is great. Now everyone can read them. And it's like, but the web browser can do so much more. Why don't we try to lean into that as opposed to just like incrementally going along a path of like, okay, now we have text in a browser, but like, what else can we do? Like, as a learning tool, like, can we make it interactive so people can kind of test out their mental models and play around with like, is the way I'm thinking about it the right way? I don't know. I just get really excited about stuff like that.
And I mean, since you talk about how difficult writing is and how, it's one of the hardest parts for sure. How did you stumble onto, I want to write a book? Did you set out to do that? Or did you think this is maybe a way for me to get the maximum impact of teaching others how to learn data viz and learn D3, basically like write the Bible for what I wish I knew when I was starting out?
Yeah. First of all, thanks to Alex. It's such a nice thing to say.
Yeah.
He likes my book. Basically, I saw, so Nate from Newline is a company. Nate is the the main person behind the company, and then it's New Line the company, and he put out this form online that was like, is there something that you're passionate about and you'd want to write about? Just like fill out this form. It'll take 5 minutes and we'll chat. And right before I saw that form, I had listened to a podcast that was basically the right time to do things is before you feel like you're ready. Because I'm normally like a kind of like conservative person. Like I don't think I'm like an expert in anything. But I saw that and I was like, well, I don't feel ready, which means it's the right time to fill out this form and we'll see where it goes. So I filled it out and we chatted, and like it was just a really organic process of like, let's talk about it. And we both got pretty excited about like talking through the outline, like, oh, this would be a really good thing to talk about. And the other motivation was just D3 is notoriously really hard to learn. Like I learned it for work. I would have to do things for work and I'd be like, all right, let's go find an example. I'd find an example and then like everyone just copy and paste the code because it's like 100, 200 lines and you're like, I'm not gonna read that. And then you have to like maintain that code that you don't quite understand for the next few years. But so like it took me a long time to figure out what the heck was going on when I was making charts with D3 code. So I was like, there's got to be a better way. So I just wanted to take everything that I had learned on the job and just kind of put it down. And honestly, I learned a lot writing the book. Like I had been using D3 for a while, 7 or 8 years, but like even just formalizing it and like if I wrote something, I'd have to be like, okay, this better be true. So I'd go to the docs and like make sure that the way I'm thinking about it is the right way. So I'd highly recommend writing a book or articles about something even that you're still learning, because it's just a really good way to like make sure that the way you're thinking about it is a good way to think about it.
I've heard people say, and I feel this myself, is that you kind of learn things twice. Like you learn it for yourself, and then when you have to teach somebody else, you learn it a completely like different way, and you really reinforce that knowledge. I've felt that so much when I've helped teach people how to do anything programming related, because you realize you're like, oh, there's actually a bunch of other things that I still needed to learn about, or concepts that were maybe a little fuzzy. And before I put my name to this, before I write it down in ink, you know, and they ship out the hardcover copy of my book, I want to make sure that it's accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, actually, I'm not sure. Let's go look it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest like common hurdle that people face when they're getting into data visualization? Like they see these amazing experiences online, they see these interactive articles, and they think, wow, I want to create that. Do they typically just, not know where to start and need to read a book or learn more from your course? Or like, what do you think people get tripped up on the most?
Yeah, I like that question. I'm also going to tie in, it kind of ties into Sahas's question. So sorry if I said that wrong, which is he asked, should I learn D3 or some other library? There's so many data viz libraries out there. Like I see it as a spectrum where there's really high level. There's like Tableau, there's like drag and drop, give me a scatter plot with this data. And then on the other end of the spectrum is D3, which is super low level, just like draw me a bar in this and this and this place, like turn these temperature values into pixel values. And you really have to do everything yourself. So there's a really nice sweet spot in the middle. If you just need like a standard chart, I need a bar chart, I need a scatter plot, I need a line chart. And you're okay with like pretty standard styles. Some of them are like pretty customizable, like they get pretty close to getting low level. They're pretty much all built using D3. So it's like, these are the building blocks. If you want to do something really complex or really like styled the way you want it, or like playing around with different data viz formats, like if you want to do things like the New York Times is doing, then you're going to want to learn D3. But if like you're just an engineer at a startup, they need some charts, I would definitely start in the middle with a chart library until you figure out that it doesn't work for you. And then you can go like down the ladder. But otherwise, like, don't make it harder for yourself. But like, I just really enjoy playing with data and like formatting it in different ways. I think it's really fun. It's kind of a fun niche. So if you're interested in it, I would recommend using D3 because it also teaches you how to think about it. Like you kind of have to learn like a framework for thinking about data and turning that into visuals, which you're not going to learn if a library is doing it all for you.
So would a good analogy be maybe D3 is like let's say you're building a website. D3 is like writing vanilla JavaScript where you have the most fine-grained control over everything that you want to do. It's just JavaScript, right? And if you maybe don't need to do something as custom, maybe you pull for a framework that helps simplify some of those things. It's built on top of that. It's going to give you a little bit more things for free, but if you really want to understand the fundamentals on how you build these experiences, you start at the JavaScript level or you start at the D3 level. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's funny because D3 is kind of from the jQuery days. Like it's 10 years old at this point. So it's just this massive library of tools that you can use. And some of those tools help with modifying the DOM. So I was at the Pudding for a while. If you haven't seen their stuff, pudding.cool is the URL. And like they make these really fun data-driven essays. A lot of their stuff is just built with like plain vanilla JavaScript and D3 to kind of like modify the DOM. But if you want something a little bit more complicated and you want to rely on like a framework to do state management and stuff for you, then you can use D3 with React. I feel like I went off on a tangent, and yes, I agree with that analogy.
No, it actually ties into something I was curious about because I did check out the Pudding, and you recently it seems like just recently changed jobs. Is that right?
Yeah, I started last week, so don't ask me too many questions about that.
Well, maybe what are you excited about with your new role?
Yeah, so the thing I'm most excited about is I remember back when I started doing web development, I watched some Brett Victor talks. And if you don't know Brett Victor, he's basically made a bunch of inspirational talks about, hey, can we rethink how we interact with technology, or like what does like a maker environment look like, and how can we use tech in a different way than we have been using it to really like give us superpowers kind of. And I just found this so inspiring, and it ties into like I feel like we had newspapers and now we have newspapers on the web. Like we're kind of just incrementally updating what it is to like code on a computer. And it's kind of like we've ended up in a local maxima where we haven't made any big changes in a while. So we're kind of like, it works. Like I code in a code editor and then I look in a browser and like, it's great. But how can we like take a step back and kind of rethink the way that developers interact with their computers? Because I feel like there's so much open space that we haven't explored. So that's what I'm really excited about. Is it's kind of rare that you get an opportunity to be paid to explore these unexplored spaces, which I don't know, I find very exciting.
That does sound amazing. And I think something that seems intriguing to me about data viz is it is a collaboration or a combination of so many different skill sets. Like you have design, you have development, and more, trying to put all these things together, understand how to best kind of convey your message. You have this raw data, and now you need to tell a story. And how do you go from point A to point B? And I think that's probably a really fun job to just start at the data and then create these experiences. And especially when they're really interactive and can, help explain something much better than a simple spreadsheet of numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that very exciting. And if you look at people whose job it is to build data viz on the web, they're from all different backgrounds. Like my coworkers at the Pudding are, they're from journalism school, they're from research, they were designers, they were developers. It's just this really fun like intersect between all of these different fields, and it's not like a formal field of study yet. So you don't have people who've studied data viz in school.
Yeah.
At least not yet, right? It's just like we all kind of found our way here from different fields. So it's just really fun, like, to work with people who have such a different background to you.
And you mentioned you were self-taught. So was it just out of a like personal enjoyment of taking data and building things with it that you thought, hey, maybe I'll turn this into a career? Or was there some other motive for learning all this?
Yeah, so it was not direct at all. I studied psychology and neuroscience in college and basically wanted to be a prison psychologist for whatever reason. And then I moved to Texas to work in a lab for a while to get research experience. And while I was there, I decided, hey, I don't want to go to grad school and I don't want to be a psychologist in prisons. So basically I took like a Code Academy course and redid my personal website a bunch of times, and then somehow got a job at a startup. And the startup it was a SaaS platform. It had like a dashboard for marketers to know to like import all of their data and kind of understand like how their audience, like what their audience thinks about things. And then I worked at another startup that was similar, but I was always kind of the data person with that research background. It's just something I had thought about more. And then as my career evolved, I just like stayed in that niche. So I was always like, my job title was always front-end engineer, but I worked at small enough companies that I kind of got to like try out a few different things and do both the development and the design and kind of do all the data viz. So it was very like organic, just like, what do I like? We're going to pursue that career.
Nice. I have a lot of like curiosity about going to school for psychology or some of the other like almost like fundamental human majors instead of like I went to school for engineering, like so boring when you think about it. You know what I mean? Like I feel like those who went to school for some of the more like social sciences or abstract things or like, I don't even know, like economics or things. I'm like, oh, you know what? I kind of wish I would have done that too. Like there's lots of interesting things in that space too.
It's such a grass is greener because I wish all the time I had gotten an engineering degree.
Really?
Yeah, because I'm just teaching myself now all of these things that I should have learned in school. And then like I feel like I've forgotten, you know, whatever psychology principles, like I'm sure they're in there somewhere, but like oh, I'm always like, there's an effect, it has a name. I don't remember, it doesn't matter.
I could totally see that where it's like grass is greener style. Well, you know, maybe the other person's approach is better.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Totally.
Did you like the startup life or do you prefer getting into larger companies?
No, I love like a small team, like kind of moving quickly and having a lot of autonomy. I've basically never had like a very strict like hierarchy. I really enjoy it. I don't know. Maybe like I just really like being able to be like, oh, wouldn't this be cool? And then having the autonomy to pursue that as opposed to
being told what to do.
I don't think I would handle that well.
Yeah, I agree with that too. One thing I think is interesting that we share in common is that we've both created courses. So it's I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you started out with your book, and then was it later down the line that you then turned it into a course and added videos on top?
Yeah. We basically took the book content and realized that a lot of people prefer to watch videos. So I recorded the videos over a few month period, and then we released it, I think, late last year as a video course alongside with the book content. So it's like very similar. It's not totally separate at all.
Yeah, because I find it fascinating whenever I talk to others who have created content, whether that's like blog posts or videos or courses or whatever, because a lot of we share a lot in common in the process of putting that content out there, whether that's researching the content, painstakingly editing and reviewing and trying to get things down, especially the videos. It's like a whole nother world in recording.
It's
and then
so much work. Oh my gosh.
I feel like people don't realize the amount of work that goes into a single video. Like there's, mentally preparing yourself that you're going to be shooting a video that day and like actually doing it, all the outtakes or times you screw up. There's so much.
I basically didn't want to open a video editor, so I would do takes until like the entire 10-minute video was correct, which I don't know which was harder, but it felt easier to do it that way. But then I'd end up recording the same video like 5 times. Maybe I should have just used a video editor and taken out some, I don't know.
It's tough.
So much work.
It's tough. Do you feel like after this experience, writing a book, doing a course, teaching others about data visualization, do you feel like you're excited about teaching more, or are you thinking you're going to focus more on like doing blogs or other sorts of content?
Definitely after the video course, I need a break. It's just like something about doing videos was just too much. Like the book, it didn't drain me at all. Like I just, in the evenings, we just sit down like, okay, like it seemed pretty logical. You're like, we want to learn this. Okay, how would I do it? Like, what are the steps? What are the concepts we need to know? And then you kind of just rate it. And then with the video, it was like, you need to be in a certain place. Like the backdrop has to be clear. Like they can't be dogs barking. Like they're just very specific criteria for what needs to happen. And it's like, I feel like video courses, you just record so much video because I couldn't even record my whole book. Like there's 2 chapters that we just have the text for, that it was just like, it's too much. Like no one's going to watch 100 hours of me talking at them, which like maybe they will, but maybe that's not good for them. So I love teaching, and I'll definitely do more like blog posts and probably, I don't know, another course maybe when I work up the energy, but the video course just took so much out of me. I don't know about you, but it's just like, it's a lot.
Yeah, so I've done 2 now. And by the time I was done with them, I was like, all right, I'm ready to move on for a while. Like, I don't even want to think about this for months. And then, you also too, because you launch it and you like help promote it, you tell people about it, you say, hey, check out this thing I made. And then after that, you're like, all right, I think I just kind of need to log off and go for a walk or something.
Yeah. And also with the video course, there's some maintenance involved. Like there's comments and people wanting help, or like maybe there's like something went wrong with some of the embeds that happen sometimes, which like you don't like finish recording and then it's over. The harder part is like it kind of just like lasts for a little bit longer. And you're like, this course is going to last forever.
Yes, it's always something. There's always someone who has a question.
Yep. Which is great, but like continuously makes it a little bit harder.
For sure. So let's say that I already know a little bit of D3. Let's say that I've taken some tutorials. I've learned a few things, and I know that I need more than a bar charting library. I want to create this interactive experience. How necessary is it to connect D3 to more than just vanilla JavaScript, I'll say? Because you've talked a little bit about Svelte as well and how you like that because it gives you, a really thin layer when you need to add some like interactivity, right? Or like some DOM manipulation. What does that progression look like for you? Like, do you start out with, let's just do it vanilla JS, see how far we can get, and then maybe I'll dip into Svelte if I need to, or what does that look like?
I basically never want to make a website again without using a JavaScript framework, especially something that would be so interactive. So I pretty much always start with Svelte or React. I have this blog post, I think it's just Intro to D3, where I break out the different D3 modules, and there's, I don't know, 30 or 50 of them. Only 2 of them are mostly devoted to manipulating the DOM and like changing what's on the page, which is the weird part when people try to combine D3 and a framework like Svelte. Like they don't know, like they'll find this D3 example and it'll be using D3 to update the DOM, but then how do you use that with Svelte? Do you kind of just do a handoff? And my rule of thumb is kind of just let the framework do what it's good at, which is manipulating the DOM, and then use D3 for like the rest of the library is just utility functions for, you know, doing color scales or drawing a line in SVG or things like that, where I'll just start in Svelte and then I'll use D3 for the things that I need it for, which I think the big mental model mismatch is people think they need to learn D3. Like it's this thing kind of like a JavaScript framework, but it's, I like to say that it's kind of just like a utility library. It's a massive utility library, but it's just so much easier if you just use it. Like you learn one function at a time and then like you can work it into your workflow, because I feel like most developers these days, I don't know if that's true, are using frameworks.
I think so. Very unscientific, I think so, but I think so.
It's definitely not a fact, but especially if you're building something really complicated, that'll need a visualization, just use that and learn how to like make a scale or draw using SVG. SVG is another really big thing that you're usually going to want to know if you're doing data visualization on the web.
So I have two questions. One is, the output of D3 always an SVG, or is it also like DOM nodes too? That's something that D3 novice me does not know.
Yeah, it's really confusing when you look at examples too. So it has some methods that'll update the DOM. Like generally the library will output SVG or Canvas. Like it has some methods that'll draw on Canvas. You can also just like take those functions up until where they manipulate the DOM. Like they kind of like let you use every part that it uses along the way internally, and then use that however you want. Like what's a good example? Like I'll use it to manipulate data and then there's no output, right? I'm just like copying to clipboard or something like that. So it has a lot of really helpful things for using SVG. Like if you want to draw like a complicated line in SVG, it's this really weird string full of like if you ever use like the coding turtle or like one of these basic coding examples where it's like go 10 steps, then turn 10 degrees and then go 5 steps. Like it's that kind of thing, just with like letters and numbers. So D3 is like crucial for turning like coordinates even into that kind of string.
This, I'll come back to this one, but the second question I had was, the creator of Svelte works for the New York Times, right? And he like part of the reason why he created it was to help with the data visualizations. Is that accurate? Yep. Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah. I don't know the origin story, but they are using it at the New York Times for their data visualizations. And it kind of makes it a really natural framework to use with creating those data visualizations. It's kind of the same as using it with React, but the things that I like about Svelte are it's more similar to like the native languages of the web. Like you're writing HTML as opposed to JSX. And you have like a script tag and some HTML, and then a style tag is what a Svelte file looks like, which feels a little bit more native and a little bit more approachable for people who are newer to coding, which is a lot of people who are making data viz on the web. And it also makes intro and outro animations really easy. That's like one of the big sticking points with React is like exit animations can be a little bit difficult because you have to keep the component alive until it exits, which if you're not using the library can be really frustrating. And there's a few other things that just make it really, really nice to use.
Yeah, I'm not sure how familiar you are with these, but Sapper and then now Svelte Kit. Have
Yeah.
you tried Sapper at all, or is that something that you're interested in for building like larger web apps in the Svelte space?
Yeah, I've used it a few times and it's really nice because it does server-side rendering.
Mm,
So if you have like a multi-page Svelte app,
mm,
um, it'll basically render the output on like as it's building it and
mm,
then spit out the compiled code. So like it's easier for crawlers to crawl the page, or if you're loading the page, it doesn't have to run the initial JavaScript.
mm.
It's kind of just like in whatever state it would be once all your components are mounted, which is super nice.
That is nice.
Yeah, and Sveltkit is the new Sapper. It's still in beta, and
Mhm.
they do not recommend that you use it because they will not help you out.
Yeah.
I've tried it, and it's very rough for the moment, but they keep saying it'll be done soon.
I'm crossing my fingers. I'm gonna dive in more. I've played with some of the like basics of Svelte, but I
Yeah,
haven't really built anything real
yeah,
yet. So I'm excited to stay tuned there and see what the future holds there.
yeah. They were building it on Snowpack,
Hmm.
and it was a controversial switch that they haven't written about yet, but they just switched to Beat, which I'm curious to read more about.
It will be interesting. I know there's a lot of innovation in the build tool
Mhm.
space, and how can we make it as fast as possible when you're
Yeah,
developing locally? How can we make it as fast as possible to get your code out to production? It's all good stuff, all good uh, competitive collaboration, we'll
yeah.
say.
Except it's horrible because you can never go back down the ladder. Like once you have hot reloading, like you never want to go back to
That's
like
true.
refreshing the web page. So like you're just spoiling yourself.
Oh yeah. You get spoiled by hot reloading, and then also like the I don't know if there's a better term for this, but like turbo links. So where it's like single page apps where you click on a link and it's already been preloaded a little
Yeah,
bit. So it just feels really
yeah,
nice. It's
yeah,
like, wow, that loaded so fast. How
yeah.
did that happen?
Things no one else would notice, but
Yeah.
like, it's
Yeah.
really painful if it's not there.
One thing I'm curious about as a very, very naive data viz person is I've heard people talk about like SVGs at scale. And if you have like just a ton of SVGs
Mm,
and how it affects performance. And I believe they said like, oh, in that case, you should use Canvas.
mhm.
Is that accurate? And like, how do you typically help educate people on the performance implications of doing data viz?
Yeah, my rule of thumb is I'll do it in SVG, and then when it gets slow, I'll switch to Canvas.
Yeah.
SVG is basically like it's HTML, but you're describing shapes. Um,
Hmm.
so like there's a few primitives. There's like circles, ellipses, rectangles, polygons, and paths, and polylines. But that's like it.
Hmm.
Um, so basically, you have this um, SVG element where everything inside is gonna be one of those 6 primitives. There's a few others that you can like group and stuff with it. And they're all absolutely positioned. So like
Mm.
it starts at 0, 0, and then you basically just have to absolutely position everything. There's no div flow like the
Yeah.
DOM has.
No flex box.
Yeah, no flex box. Um, so it once you have like 1,000 dots in your scatter plot, it's gonna really slow down the page.
Mm.
Um, 1,000 is probably a good limit. So if you're planning on like animating 1,000 points, you're gonna want to switch to Canvas if you want things to be like really smooth. Canvas is a little bit more annoying because it's imperative code instead of
Mm.
declarative, where you have to say like you have this function that you run where it's like, okay, clear the canvas and then draw a circle here, and then like you have to tell it exactly what to do instead of just
Yeah.
saying like this is what I want the output to look like. And you also can't look at it in the elements panel because it's just a canvas. It's just like one image that
Mm.
you're updating. But it's so much faster because you don't have the overhead of having a node for each element that you're drawing.
Mhm.
So I much prefer using SVG. Another thing you get with SVG is like you get the mouse events. So you can be like
Mm.
mouse over on click. Whereas with Canvas, you have to like figure out where the mouse is and then figure out what it's hovering over, which like it's just more work, but it's going to be way faster if you need that.
And does D3 have those primitives for like making Canvas easier, or is that just using like vanilla JS?
It has methods that'll draw like axes on Canvas. It makes it maybe a little bit easier, but not a ton.
So, okay, good to know. So if I'm doing data viz, I'm probably fine for SVG up until like 1,000 maybe as a somewhat rule of thumb, and then I might need to consider Canvas.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like not too hard to switch.
Mm.
So just like start in SVG. And then when it gets slow, just like commit yourself to like an hour of looking up Canvas methods.
Are there any like cross-browser issues or anything, I guess, in the like HTML spec that would make this easier? Because I wonder if I think I've remembered like testing we had a site for Vercel where it worked great in Chrome or something, and then we tried it in Safari and it had like a big canvas effect or something. We're like, oh shoot, we need to optimize like some of the scroll handlers or some of these things. I wasn't sure if you had ran into any like cross-browser issues while doing data viz things.
There definitely used to be a lot with SVG just because each browser has implemented it to a different extent. Like they've all kind of agreed, like, hey, I think we're on SVG too. Like, hey, this is what it should be. Like, this is what we should build, but then it just hasn't been super prioritized.
Yeah.
There's also like image editing apps like Illustrator and Figma. Those are all vector based and they'll output SVGs. So like all of these things have to agree on a syntax that'll work for all of them. And there's just like weird inconsistencies where like you can animate a rectangle's height in Chrome, but not in Firefox, which I think they've actually implemented now. But it would only animate, like some things would only animate in Chrome for a while. So if you're not testing in all browsers, then like you're going to be missing something. Also, like transforms and rotations work differently in different browsers. It's really frustrating.
That's the worst. That's interesting that Figma does that because I feel like Figma has a reputation for really good performance. I know that they do some like crazy advanced stuff with WebAssembly and like C++ or some stuff that was way over my head. But all I know is that the end product is super nice, super fast. So it is interesting that they're using SVG. Huh.
They at least export SVG. I don't know if what they're drawing is in SVG. It probably isn't.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to get somebody from Figma and talk to them because I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, I bet they're using like Canvas or WebGL or something.
Probably. Yeah. How does D3 relate to WebGL? Like WebGL is like more of motion graphics, right?
It's all I know is it's really fast, and I keep meaning to look into it. Like you can get like 100,000 nodes I've seen like animated.
Yeah.
And it's just like really slick, but it's basically writing fragment shaders, right? Which I don't know. I need to devote like a lot of time to figuring that out.
I did a live stream with a guy named Bruno, who's like really big in this space. And
it's awesome.
Yeah. And I was just blown away by some of the stuff that you can do with that. It's absolutely incredible.
You're like, am I still in a web browser?
No, seriously. But it's incredible, but it's also complicated. It requires an upfront investment, I think, to say, this is something that I want to learn about and get down to the nitty gritty on. But I do think, to the WebGL point and like the 3JS stuff, and then the D3 and the data viz stuff, I see these two areas growing so fast and also like fundamentally changing how people interact with websites. And to me, that's really, really exciting, because when I think about like the next 5 to 10 years of the web, that's the web that I want to live on. Like, I want to have these amazing, like, interactive experiences that feel like you said, like more than just a newspaper on the web. Like, it needs to be a different experience.
Yeah. I definitely agree. The hardest part to deal with is like, you still want things to be accessible. So it's hard to be like, well, I want it to be like you zoom in and then like all these things appear and it's like a map, and then you're like, but what do we do about like screen readers, or what do we do for like low vision? And it's just like a whole can of worms where like it's so easy to make a website that's really like basic and that is accessible for everyone that needs to use the web. So it's just like an existential crisis every time I want to do something really crazy. Is like, we still want everyone to be able to access it, and we need it to be performant. And so it's just like, it's not just building the thing, it's figuring out this whole space around it that like blows out the scope.
Do you think that more people will go the approach of like how some of the news sites have their main experience, they also have the like light experience, where it's like, we know you're on a slow connection, we know that you care about like just the text, like the most accessible experience, here's a completely different like subset so that you can focus on what you care about? I feel like that could be tough to have that. And then also like, but we told you, like, a picture is worth, 1,000 words. Like, we told you this amazing story, and we have to now convert it to text or something.
Yeah, it's like they used to have separate code for mobile browsers. It's like, it worked. Like, something like that would definitely work. And I think like having the two designs, like one for someone who wants to use a screen reader or something, or like is not interested in how cool you think you can get with the web, and also have the like really like flashy thing or whatever. Is like, I feel like there's all these agency websites that do like the scroll jacking, and like when I see that, I'm like, just let me scroll. I don't care like what's gonna come into the page when I scroll down to this section. I just want to read your content.
For sure. I wholeheartedly agree there.
Yeah.
One thing that I love about your site and just about all the visualizations that you put out is, I think that the design of the visualization is really good. So shout out to you. And one thing I'm really curious about is, I mean, you're obviously self-taught, so you've figured out this along the way, and you've learned, and you've, progressed as a designer as well. What does that design workflow look like for you? Do you like pre-design things in a Figma and then convert it to code, or how do you take, maybe just walk me through like how you take an idea in your head for, I have this data, I want to visualize it. Do I go to Figma first and try to bring it to life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So usually my process for like, hey, we have this data set, what are we going to do? Is like, the number one thing is figure out both what is the main goal and who are the users, because that's something I usually skip and then wish I knew earlier. And I'll like write it down and refer back to it. The second thing is looking at the data set. Like, what are the different metrics that exist in this data set? What kind of metrics are they? Are they continuous numbers? Are they like bucketed numbers? Are they strings? That kind of thing. And like kind of looking at the distribution of like, do they all kind of fit in this one value? And then I'll take a piece of paper and then I'll sketch out different formats. I want at that point to go to code and like just start jamming, but it's like, it always ends up better if I do some sketches first of like, okay, well, if like maybe we visualize this metric as like the X position or as color, that kind of thing. And then I'll also go on Pinterest and just like make an inspiration board for myself to figure out like, what are things with similar data, or what are things with a similar style to something that I want. And then I'll kind of just like sit with those things side by side, and then I'll explore like maybe one direction or two directions. Haha, one direction. And then maybe I'll do something a little bit more higher fidelity in Figma. But usually, if I'm just doing a project by myself, I'll switch to code. And then like, because with data viz, it's really important that you see what the data looks like in a certain format, because it often won't look anything like what you want it to look like. And
Yeah.
you might have to just like scrap it, go back to your sketches and figure out something that'll work better for that data set. Because it's not just like, oh, it's going to look like this, and then you code it and it looks like that. It looks nothing like that. And you need to kind of figure out how to work with like outliers or like sparse data sets, that kind of thing. And then for basic design, I usually just work in code. If I get really frustrated, I'll do pencil and paper. But my design workflow is just like a lot of disappointment. Like, it's so hard to figure out how to design something to your own taste.
Yes.
And it's just like you have to be repeatedly disappointed with yourself and then find something that like you're okay with. And then you kind of just leave it at that.
That one touches my soul, because I think as creatives, as people who like to create experiences, and I consider creatives like designers, developers, you know, anything like that, as this type of person, you know, you have a mental quality bar. Like, you know what good looks like. You've consumed enough, you've seen enough that you have, you know, high expectations because you've seen what you consider good. And then you struggle against, I know what good is. Now, how do I also create something that's good? I feel like, and it's tough too, especially when you're learning new things, because you don't have the experience to more quickly get up to that threshold. You have to fight your way up to meet your quality bar. And it's something that I think that could be talked about more, because we all struggle with this so much, and it's easy to get like almost torn down or deflated or defeated when you're like, oh, this doesn't look like, you know, a professional designer designed it.
Someone who's been doing this for like 20 years.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like it's like with drawing, people are just, oh, like, I'm not someone who can draw. And it's like, we all like, we're born, like, no one was born knowing how to draw well. Like, it's just like not tearing yourself down whenever you don't like what you've put on paper, and just like kind of working through it. Yeah, it's really hard though.
And two, you talked about the iteration too, where you know, you have to try a few different things, and it helps when you put those sketches down on paper first, so that you don't exactly like jump straight into the code, spend all that time only just to throw it away. It's funny, because I feel that so much too from just doing web development for any type of design I'm trying to implement. If I think about it a little bit and I step back and I like actually try to, as for projects I'm doing myself, and I actually try to design something, like 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be way better off. Then when I just jump straight into the code, I'm like, I can do this. Nope.
Yeah. There's also like, so I've worked with designers where they don't know how the web works, and they'll do something like totally bonkers, and I'll look at it and be like, oh man, that's going to be really hard to figure out how to do on the web. But then there's the other side of like, I'm a developer. If I'm working with code, I'm just going to do whatever is easiest. So like, I need that middle ground of like, I need to be in a space where I'm not working with like the web's grain or like what's easy to develop. But it's still important to keep in mind, like when you're sketching something, like how easy it would be to implement, because there's some designs that are just like, this is going to take like 5 times longer than like another design that's probably as good. But like, I like that middle ground of like, I can think outside the box, but like, I also know the box.
Yes.
So I can stay somewhat around it.
Absolutely. Thank you to everyone who's joining. I'll quickly answer we can go through some of these questions, but yeah, hi to everyone joining live. We appreciate you. asking questions. I see two in here that are kind of related. Basically, React libraries for data viz, or what do you think about the VisX library from Airbnb? I've actually used that one a little bit, but I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what you think about it. I looked into it a little bit. I haven't actually used it, but I know it's pretty far down the spectrum where like
Mm-hmm.
you can do a lot with it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also use one of the examples to get kind of a whole chart out of the box.
Yeah, so I've created a few like side projects over my whole like web dev career. When I started using React, if I needed a chart, I just tried to find npm install React charts or something like that. And at the time, I think I used High Charts was popular. I think it's still popular. High Charts. And a few others that they were like pretty opinionated. It was like really easy to get your pie chart or your bar chart. And then you pass the data basically as like an array or an object or something. And then you could override like the colors and the styles like a little bit, but you didn't really have a lot of like flexibility there.
Yeah.
So that went on for a while. And then when I actually revisited, like, oh, I need to make a chart, all right, I need to do some kind of visualization last year. I checked in like what I basically said, what are other people using? And I think just in general, like the React ecosystem has kind of transitioned to like more of these headless style libraries where it's like, hey, we don't care how you style this. We're going to give you the primitives to actually do the things that you need to do. And that's kind of the vibe that I get from VisX, which is like, hey, here's how you can do some really low level lines or bars, like almost like D3 style. But then you get to determine how you want to style this or put this together. So I haven't liked it for that. We use it for a few things on Vercel.com that I wasn't involved in, but yeah, it seems okay.
Yeah. As far as like the React libraries I've seen, it seems like one of the best ones and probably the one I would reach for if I had a new project and I wanted to use the library.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
For your blog, what's your tech stack on your blog?
Oh man, it's all open, so you all can go look at how much of a mess it is. It's just like because I built it 5 years ago and I haven't changed anything since. So it's React. A lot is just custom, and then I use D3 for some things and Lodash. That's pretty much it, I think.
That's honestly, you deserve like the gold medal for developer blogs that you have kept the same tech stack
yeah.
for like 5 years. Like that's impressive because there's such a tendency. I think you were talking about when you started out, right? Like you were just like rebuilding personal sites or blogs. Yeah. It's so easy to want to just like try out the new latest cool thing and not actually like write the intro to D3 article or like put out that content.
Yeah, I always wonder with a personal website, like I feel like whatever I build it in, I'm gonna be sick of in a year. Yeah. So one thing that the pudding does that I like is like each like article is it's just like whatever from scratch, and then you deploy that page on AWS and they're all kind of linked together. I'm like, maybe I should just do that for my site where everything is kind of its own thing, and then like, whenever I do a new thing I can use whatever, but it also sounds harder to maintain. I don't know if there are like other examples of people who do some middle ground.
I know people are really interested in that. I've heard it called like micro front ends, basically like stitching together different front ends, especially at like a per page level too. That does sound interesting. Yeah, I wonder how feasible that actually is to do, or if it's really, really hard.
Yeah, yeah.
What animation libraries can you recommend? So you need to transform your visualization. Are you just doing like CSS animations, or do you take it a step further?
Yeah. So with visualizations, I'll typically use CSS until I can't. So like hover, really nice if you're using SVG. You can just do hover and like turn something a different color or make it bigger. That's not like there's some SVG properties that you can't animate using transition or animations, CSS transition or animations. So then if that doesn't work, if I have like vanilla code, vanilla JS code, then I'll use D3. It has a really nice transition method that you can just like say like change this X position to this X position, and it'll just animate it really nicely for you. If I'm in React, I'll use React Spring is probably the only one that I've used, but it's really nice. In Svelte, they have something called tweened or Spring, which you kind of just put a value in there, and then whenever you update it, it'll like interleave the updates over whatever duration that you went, which is really nice. So it kind of just depends. So CSS transitions first, and then I'll move to JS if I have to.
Yeah, because the animations are they built into the main Svelte package, or is it like just an additional package you add on? Because I remember seeing them in the docs as like a first class citizen.
Yeah, Svelte is really nice because it doesn't have like a core bundle. Like with React, the whole library kind of gets thrown into your app. So when a user is loading a page, they have to load the whole React library. With Svelte, it kind of like unbundles itself. So like when it builds, it'll build whatever that you've used and kind of like kick out whatever you don't use. So they have the ability to have like a more expansive core API. So they have kind of like transitions built in, which are really nice. So you just put like in fly on an element, and then it'll like animate in when it gets rendered and animate out if you use out or transition. I don't know. It's really nice. Like if you come from React land, you're like, really? It was like 2 words? Yeah.
I didn't have to npm install something.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Related question. So if you are doing something D3 in React, is there like a starter kit or an easy way to go in that route?
If you're like first and foremost a JavaScript developer or a web developer, like using React, then like I would recommend maybe checking out that blog post that Lee posted earlier, and just looking at like, it's a good view of what are the different parts of D3 that I can use. So I totally recommend just using React and then grabbing D3 for like, hey, I want to create an SVG line string definition, or just like, don't use D3 for updating the DOM because React does that really nicely. And like, I find it kind of weird to hack around like this framework that I'm using and then use D3 and like have React render an empty div and then draw like a whole chart with D3. And then like whenever the div re-renders, just redrawing the chart. I'd rather just use React as much as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are there good strategies for mouse events on mobile devices for D3?
So I think this last version, V6, they added like D3 pointer, like pointer events, which I think meant to both mouse and touch events. If you just look up, I think it's in the D3 selection GitHub repo, which is where their docs are. But yeah, definitely using the latest version of D3 because I know they put a lot of thought into that. But I haven't actually used them, so because I've been using Svelte or React so much.
I can't help out there, but I would say that's a great direction to go in for them asking. Well, we're about to hit an hour, and I want to be mindful of your time. So first off, I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined in live. We really appreciate joining and asking questions and helping us chat about data viz and answering all your questions. And seriously, thank you for joining. This has been a lot of fun, taking the time out of the day just to, chat with a new friend. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. And thanks for all these questions are really great. So thanks for asking them.
Awesome. Well, this will be live on my YouTube if you missed it. There's also links to Amelia's blog and her course in the description below. So check those out. Buy the course if you haven't. It's awesome. And yeah, thank you everyone, and stay tuned for the next live stream. Thanks.
Hey y'all.